Right, so hello everyone. So today we're going to continue on our great series on diet and exercise, and today we're going to move on to protein. So as you can see here, we've got a lovely selection of beans and lentils and chickpeas as well, and they're all called legumes. So yeah, that's your preferred choice of protein, and let's discuss why that is. So firstly, we've got a shirt check. We've got Burton again, this nice pattern here, very Versace, very nice. And yeah, let's move on. So firstly, about how do we get our protein? So the recommended dose is about 0.8 grams per kilogram of your body weight per day. So for me, at the bottom here you can see 0.8 times, I weigh about 70, so that's about 56 grams of protein a day. So the adult requirement is about 8 to 9% of the energy intake, and as you can see, this is much lower than our carbs and our lipids that we talked about before. However, although that we don't need much of it, this is why it's very overdone in the Western world, and we consume way too much protein than we need to. So let's talk about why that is. So if we talk about firstly the nature of nitrogen balance. So protein, one of the major sources of our nitrogen that we get in our body, which is very important. And in healthy adults, this protein synthesis equals the turnover. So what does that mean? So when we take on amino acids from our protein, those are broken down and made into other proteins. And that means that this turnover basically means that the protein synthesis that we get equals to the protein breakdown. So you can either also be in this positive or negative balance. So positive meaning if your body synthesizes more than it degrades. So for example, in growing children or adolescents, or you can be in this negative balance if your body degrades more than it makes. So for example, people who suffer with malnutrition or from injuries, and they could suffer from this negative balance as well. But obviously, in the Western world, we love to eat, and this is obviously overdone, and this is why stuff like global warming is a real issue. So if we talk about some of the diseases in these amino acids, so first we've got malnutrition, so obviously not eating enough, and the main one is called marasmus. So this is a disease resulting from severely inadequate intake of calories and nutrients. So what can we see in patients like this? So we've got muscle wasting, stunted physical growth, brain development issues, as well as anemia. And obviously that's not ideal, and you can see children in Africa starving, and they mainly suffer from this malnutrition issue. However, on the opposite side of the scale, and very more prominent in the Western world, we've got heart disease. So as we know, animal protein is high in cholesterol and trans fatty acids, and there is a very detrimental link between that and heart disease. And one of the issues is to do with homocysteine levels. So in America, for example, not even 10% of people, if something like that, don't get enough nutrients. And this is especially important in this meat, as homocysteine can potentially be harmful. And if we don't have the vitamin B12 and vitamin 6 to digest it, it will accumulate in the blood and cause issues. So that's why it's very important to have that. The body is really efficient with circulating the amino acids. So we always have this amino acid pool. And that basically means that when we take in amino acids, they're always broken down into, the proteins are always broken down into amino acids, and amino acids are made into proteins. And this is why our body is very efficient in breaking those down to meet our requirements. If we move on to other diseases, we've got cancer. So protein-rich foods, mainly animal proteins, tend to have more short-chain fatty acids, such as this cholesterol. And this creates a definite link between bowel cancer and animal protein. Scientists have put animal protein and processed meat mainly in class 1 cause of cancer, and that's in the same class as smoking and alcohol. So if you think about kind of parents reading this and hearing about this, when you're giving your kids kind of animal protein, you're thinking, would you give them a cigarette in the same way? And it's seen in America especially that the leading cause of dying is dietary risks, so stuff like heart disease. And we obviously don't see this as it's a long-term effect, whereas smoking alcohol could have a much faster onset. And dietary risks, it's something like cancer, drinking and smoking combined. They don't even cause enough deaths than simply dietary risk. If we then move on to kidney disease, so animal protein can cause kidney deterioration, and that's due to the increased fluid loss and overload function of the kidneys. So when we take in those excess amino acids due to our diet, what happens is our kidneys basically get overworked with this deamination process that keep us still occurring to break down those amino acids and get rid of that excess nitrogen. because as we talked about in our previous lectures, that excess ammonia could have detrimental effects on our mental development. Then we talked about diabetes. So this is especially important in diabetics, because that's why they're advised to normally take in less protein, because those with nephropathy, which we talked about, so that's the issue of mesenteric matrix increasing and our glomerular decreasing filtration rate. So what happens is basically the kidneys again get overloaded with this deamination process, putting pressure to excrete unused nitrogen. And then again, that causes this ammonia toxicity. Therefore, people that consume high protein diet need to drink loads of water, because this allows for the diuria to be diluted, and therefore we reduce the risk of dehydration. Moving on to osteoporosis. We've got calcium excretion increased in urine due to this excess protein, and the calcium phosphate ratio is not determined, so we get that imbalance. Also could be a less bone mass, meaning more fractures. Also this could be balanced by adequate calcium from a diet. However, it's really rare for people to get enough calcium as it is. A decrease in one thing may be better than increasing another. I think this is the last point, so we've got obesity. So obviously protein doesn't fill you up as much as fiber, for example, so we end up eating more. And excess protein could be converted to fat due to it being one of the major fat storages, leading to obesity. Also gut flora, so plant protein is sent to increase the amount of healthy bacteria that we have in our body, which allows for less inflammation, as animal protein causes to increase the unhealthy ones. So if we talk about protein quality now, kind of finishing off with this complete and incomplete protein. So this measures how efficiently dietary protein is used in the body. And that depends on 1, digestibility, so a measure of the amount of amino acid absorbed from a given protein intake, and amino acid composition, so if diet supplies too little of an essential amino acid, P synthesis is limited, because as we know, we get these amino acids which are turned to polypeptides and then into proteins. So if we're missing that one amino acid, then the whole protein cannot be formed. Also, we get some issues with stuff like phenylketonuria, where usually tyrosine isn't an essential amino acid, but phenylalanine is. But in that disease, we obviously don't get that turnover from phenylalanine to tyrosine, so therefore tyrosine becomes an essential amino acids. So we always have to make sure to check patient history in that sense. We have this issue of heavily debated issue of complete and incomplete protein. So kind of in an old school way, complete protein is basically animal protein, easily digested and supplies essential amino acids in appropriate proportions. And we've got incomplete, which is basically plant protein. But this has recently been obviously overdone, as plant proteins contain all amino acids, while some may contain less amino acids. This is overdone anyway, because plants already have the needed amino acid for us to function anyway, so there's no need to load ourselves with loads of protein. And my teacher always talked about stuff like the comparison being, why buy a car that goes 400 miles per hour when the maximum speed limit is 200 miles per hour? So it doesn't make any sense to overload yourself with unneeded protein. So if we talk about the food groups, so kind of going against the point of vegetarianism, veganism, so we've got legumes, so they have the limited amino acids methionine and cysteine, but they're high in lysine. Then we've got grains that are limiting lysine, but high in methionine and cysteine. So you can already see how these plant groups balance each other out. So if you have a healthy vegan diet, you can easily get enough of these amino acids by not eating meat. And then we've got veg that's low in all 3 of them. However, obviously veg is amazing and supplies us with loads of other phytochemicals that are needed, as well as vitamins and minerals. So as you can see, we've got these 3 main groups here, and that's what you're basically eating as a vegan these days. But however, don't forget that due to being vegan, B12 supplements are very important, because we can't get that from food. So if we talk about sustainability again, so obviously a potential damaging impact is the growth of less nutritious crops, especially in Asian populations. That's seen to be an issue, and that, I don't know, maybe due to producers finding a cheaper way of producing these crops but which don't have enough nutrients, and therefore that causes an issue there. It's kind of the issue that we are no longer eating just for ourselves, and that's a global issue, and whatever we put in our mouths and what we buy at the shop has a global impact. And if we ever buy anything and just throw it out, some kid somewhere could have eaten that. So we can't think about ourselves anymore in that respect. So kind of the benefits of plant-based diet: we've got lower saturated fat, cholesterol, high in fiber and phytochemicals. It's more economical, so I found that switching from vegan diet, you can save a lot of money as you're getting filled more with the food you're eating due to the fiber. And obviously beans, can of beans cost 40p, whereas meat can cost to like £7 or whatever, and that builds up in the long term. But then you can also eat less meat due to these ethical reasons. So they also cause less obesity, defense against cancer, less heart disease and lower blood pressure. So either way, if you're doing it for yourself or you're doing it for the environment, it's a win-win situation for both fronts. So then if we talk about quickly about supplements, so protein powders, they have potential bad impact on kidneys due to that, again, the elimination process of excess amino acids and nitrogen excretion, which can cause renal complications. However, also the Western diet already involves excess protein, and there is really no need to consume kind of pure protein in these powder form, because it doesn't really build muscle or increase performance. The only real way you're going to build muscle is by working out and eating enough protein from your diet that contain loads of other stuff that can help you have an overall balance. And that kind of comes into the point of amino acid supplements. So we're naturally not meant to consume high concentrations of a single amino acids, and they don't provide any real benefit. And this is why eating food with the correct amino acids, plus that loads of vitamins, phytochemicals, minerals, it's just better. So like, why wouldn't you choose that? Potentially, what these supplements mean is that if you have too much of one, so if for example you've got amino acid A and amino acid B and they both use the same transporter, if you overload your body with one of the amino acids that use up all the transporter sites, you could become deficient in that other amino acid which use the same transporter. So yeah, just eat your veggies, eat your proteins and beans, and you'll be fine. So that's kind of the end, and I just want to summarize by thinking that if you eat meat and you think that's the only way of getting protein, then you kind of need to think about, where do animals that you're eating get their protein from? Because a lot of other animals don't have the ability to make certain proteins, and they just get them from the ground. Yeah, the planet is amazing, so we get our energy from the sun, we get our sun vitamin of vitamin D, and everything else just grows from the ground, and it's just amazing how you can eat that, yeah, and be perfectly healthy. Think about that, kind of miss out the middle ground of the cow. So yeah, thank you for watching, don't forget to like and subscribe. Check in the description for any links that you like, especially that Essentials Nutrition book. It's been very good. Talks about kind of each of the points that we're making in these videos, as well as goes on to talk about diseases. So yeah, hope you had a good day, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Cheerio.